we have some guests that came in, I think, from as far away as Albany tonight for our first topic. So we do have 30 minutes slotted for the presentation by BN Professional Services on a proposal for Webster open space. So I'll hand the baton over to John and Larry and the crew.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I can go first.
Please.
I feel so honored. So we're here to talk about open space. Myself, Larry Peckham, I don't know, I know some of you. I was the chair of the Open Space Committee in 2005, I believe, plus or minus. And so today we're here as a group, actually. It's myself, John Bean from Bean Planning, Peter Elder, who I'm sure everybody knows, Diane Davis, who, if you don't know her, you will know her soon, and Gail Binder. So it's been over 15 years since I chaired the Open Space Committee last go-around, where we put together a green space plan. And Barry, you were on the committee, and as I remember, you didn't have gray hair in those days, but so it's been a while. So it's been a while, yeah. At the time we started the last committee, Webster was seen to be the fastest growing town in the county, and many residents were concerned about the rate of growth and what changing character of the town. So Kathy Thomas, who was the supervisor at the time, was pretty sensitive to that, and she formed this committee to address that issue. And the first thing the committee did was find somebody that knows something about this subject. And we did a search, and we ran across Bean Planning, John Bean in particular, and he had just finished the planning project for open space planning for Pittsford, has many years of experience, and I think you're leaving from here tonight and you're going to go down to Brockport to work on the canal with the state.
Yeah.
So here's a man that really knows the subject. So the committee, after we found John, he put together a green space plan to go forward, and we started an outreach effort. 2 bond referendums were held. The first one was defeated. The second one, which was somewhat more modest, did pass, and then bonding and the grants were obtained, and 1,000 acres plus or minus of land were identified and purchased or protected under that plan. It was a nicely executed nicely executed project, and I think everything I've heard in the last 15 years is everybody was very happy with that. Now we're in 2021. Those bonds that were issued are coming to an end. I think 2023 or 2024. And also, I believe the 2008 Town Comprehensive Plan is coming up for an update, probably pretty quick. So the group of us thought maybe it's a good time to look back and look at the current state of Webster's open space and the situation, and see if there's reason to do something more. If we look at the change in Webster over that period of time, Webster has 21,000 acres of total acres of property or of land. In 2005, the population was 37,000, and we had 8,000 undeveloped acres. In 2022, and I believe these are pretty close, we now have 46,000 people and 4,000 acres of undeveloped land. So if we wait another 15 years, and I just draw a straight line through this, we're probably up to 55, if we keep going the same rate, we're up to 55,000 people and no undeveloped land. So if there's any interest of people to do something different than exactly what's happening now, this may be a last chance to really address the subject. So the town continues to build up pretty quickly, and as a result, to encourage discussion and provide a basis for that discussion, we as a group found John and had him put together a proposal to investigate the current state of undeveloped land, examine possibilities for town purchases possibly, to develop and present a plan for you, the board, and help manage the execution of that plan if the board decides to proceed with it. So with that introduction and background, I'd just like to turn it over to John and let him present the proposal that he's put together.
Thank you, Larry.
There you go.
It's great to be back in town. I see some familiar faces and some new faces. I want to just thanks to the group. I call them the troublemakers or advocates, maybe is a better word, Tom. Because I think Larry reached out to me and so did Diana to say, hey, John, we think the town, what Larry had just said, it seems the time is right to have this conversation about open space. We call it, for starters anyway, version 2.0 for Webster. Recognizing the town, since Larry was chair of the committee, has still also done additional purchases and acquisitions of land for open space and green space. And I think everyone, I'm sure, appreciates all that. But maybe what was asked, I think Tom's supervisor was conveyed to me through this group that you thought it would be good to have some numbers, some things to look at, not just goals, but what are we targeting maybe? How much land? What might it cost? What might our options be? And so we worked together with this group and with the help of the town provided some of the geographic information system, and we analyzed that at least to let's call it a basic level of what's out there. And so that's where that number of a little over 4,000 acres comes to. So I'm going to jump up to this map real quick. I'm not going to get into detail on the map because that's really not the point tonight. But this map shows for everyone where those parcels of property are, and the green, a lot of it's protected already. The green and the colors on the left, the beige, are other protected land, the Schreiber Farm and the county parks, etc. But the parcels that are, if you would, unprotected, are shown in the different colors of brown and orange and yellowish colors. And there's like 4,200 acres of land there. Recognizing this land is in various forms of private ownership, right? Institutional ownership. So we really don't know at this point the level of interest across the board for all these property owners in preserving land for open space, and that is part of the goal, is to have that conversation if that's something the board thinks is a good idea. I know, just anecdotally, there's folks on the committee, Gail, that you're a property owner, right? And you've mentioned to us that you'd be interested in maybe not developing your land or developing some land that you have. It's not a large holding, but there's probably more interest in one than meets the eye, right? And so that's what we want to explore. I'll give you a few numbers now, and we'll talk about that and schedule. So one of the things that we looked at is, well, what would a cost of something like this be? Now, these numbers are really based on not an appraisal, but they're based on the assessor's values, and if the assessor's values we felt were depressed because it might have an agricultural abatement, because it's farmland or something, we gave a value to it of, I don't remember now, $4,000 or $5,000 an acre or something. But we had a range of investment from $3.6 million, which we, our opinion would be that might protect around 430 acres of land. Okay, and the next increment was $7.2 million, and that might protect something in the neighborhood of 900 acres, which is kind of similar to what was done last time. The third increment was $10.8 million, and that might protect 1,350 acres or so of property. And the next increment was $14.7 million, which would be protect approximately 1,640 acres. So that kind of gives some alternates or something for the town to think of. And so, so really what we're talking about is a process, right, to identify priority sites, to, and from one point of view, like looking at the land, identify what community goals are, what makes something priority property, identifying, budget aspects, fiduciary, what if anything, can the town invest, again, all the things that you're coming at. So what we want to do, what we propose is actually create an open space plan for the town, right? So would focus on preserving land through permit protection, through bonding, through some other financing mechanism, purchasing some property outright, purchasing easements on some property where you don't want to or need to hold the title. And the other part of it was looking at all the other tools, looking at zoning, and incentive zoning for protecting land, looking at all the ways that you can do it. So you come up with a comprehensive way to, conserve these resources. The only thing I think we can all agree on is the fact that at some point, all this land will become developed. Unless a private owner says, I don't want to develop it, I prohibit my heirs from ever developing it, and that goes in the deed. And that does sometimes happen, right? And the land trust is out there, Jesse Land Trust, sometimes that can happen. But beyond that, you just have to look at the Rochester region or any metropolitan region of the world, right, and you'll see that's what happens. And that's not a bad thing. Development is important, homes are important, but so there's some decision-making, though, as Larry said. We don't know when that would be. Will it be in 15 years as straight line, or will it be longer? So we put together a proposal on how we would approach doing this for the town. We modeled it on the work we did last time we were in town. And we also kind of expanded the scope a little bit to address some zoning tools and some other tools that aren't only financial, not only purchase, right? So to give you a whole list of tools that would dovetail into your comprehensive plan, right? So if you think of the comprehensive plan as having different elements, like a transportation element, a land use element, this would be the open space element. And we're giving it a pretty detailed look. It's not just what I call, apple pie and motherhood goals of an open space plan, but really getting down to crisp plan that identifies what you're going to protect and how you're going to protect it, and what it's going to cost and how it's going to be paid for, so everybody can understand it. The other little piece in town, this reflects a little bit our discussion. If the town were to do something like this, a program, kind of a timeline and activities. I don't expect you all to read this. It was more just if you would, quite frankly, a prop, just to show you a nice pretty picture of a flow of work. But it's real. It's based on our experience.
What we don't know is if Karen can
zoom
in the camera for people at home.
Oh, good. Well, that would be nice. Well, they can see here. We show kind of some infographics, right? Basically, taking folks on a timeline from now, right? Let's call this winter, spring, 2021. Summer, fall 2021, winter, spring 2022, summer, fall 2022, and 2023, 2024. Now, sometimes those seem far away, but you also know they're right here, right? And so the steps along the way include, getting the committee organized, refining this work that we did, the mapping and all that, landowner outreach, a public information program, to explain to this community and have community input to the process. Getting the open space plan underway, get a market analysis going so that the board can all understand what the values are, the ranges of values, right? Because they're going to be widespread. Continue landowner outreach into 2022. Complete a market analysis, having the open space plan complete, okay? And then in the summer, fall of 2022, the town board approval process, adoption of the plan, adoption of any resolutions, bond resolutions, changes to the town code, zoning, etc. And then from that point, moving on to implementing the plan, purchasing property, purchasing development rights, any final changes to the town code that may be in order. And so that kind of outlines the whole program in a way. We put together a proposal, you've all got a copy of it, which outlines these tasks in more detail, provides a little bit of our experience in this work. We provide a budget and a kind of a level of effort, if you would, and that cost estimate. And the other part of the cost, of doing this kind of a project is the purchase of the property, right? And it's whatever is negotiated or how that's done for the value of the property, which is the bulk of the cost, right? But there's other costs involved. Some of them are minor, and some of it can be significant, like the cost of, you're going to buy property, you want to be sure the title, normal real estate transactions, but sometimes surveys, right? You want a clean bill of health environmentally in terms of there's no pollution if you're purchasing a property, even an easement, all these kind of things, the cost of bonding, the cost of the planning, the cost of legal fees. There's those costs, and we put them at kind of a high number of 20%. So we're aware of that. It would be under that number, but that's a number we use for planning at this stage because we don't know really what the total extent would be. So I think in the end, the goal would be to, I think, to go forward and look at the point of 2024, 2025 and say, okay, look what we did. Look what we did. We really put together what I would like to think is a really great plan for the town. It's ambitious enough that we're really doing something, but it's not so big that most of the people feel we're going over too far. But something that provides meaningful change. I think there's a lot of interest from a lot of people in being able to get around town by walking, by hiking, by biking. That could be a big part of it, connecting the town together. Big part could be identifying parts of town that don't have a lot of open space or recreation resources, filling those in. The other part would be, I would expect, asking the townsfolk, what should our priorities be? What should we focus on? Is this important at all? And understanding that. So that would be all, I think, part of the work of the committee and the town to make that all happen. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I'm glad to be here and have a chance to chat with you all, and I'll stop talking and back to you, Supervisor.
Sure. John, all right, thank you. I don't know if any of the rest of the team have anything, or if we...
There's grant. Yes, there is grant funding available. Lots of different grants. They're almost all for the capital side of things, to purchase land, purchase easements. The last time when we were involved with the town a couple of years ago, I think we were over $2 million of grants for the town. 2.5 million or so, and grants. So there is funding available. There are ways to be smart about how this is done to reduce the out-of-pocket to the townspeople. There's landowners who may want to donate. For example, in Pittsford, when we did that, the landowners donated. The town. I remember these numbers. They authorized $9.9 million to do their preservation plan. In fact, we just drove by the Powers Farm on the way in on 490 by the canal. There, behind the canal, you see that beautiful farm. They authorized $9.9 million. They spent in the neighborhood of $7 million. Is what they spent. And in addition to the grants, the landowners donated over $3.6 million in value to the town, where they agreed to not go for the appraised value, but they sold at what's called a bargain sale. They have a little benefit. That's a tax write-off for them if they have income they can use to offset it. But also, they wanted to partner with the town. They wanted to save the land. They didn't want to. They could have gotten more for it, in other words. So that would be part of the whole process. So, thank you for your question.
Well, all right. Anybody on the town board have a comment or question?
My only comment is that one of your points certainly is that we would have to obviously go out for a referendum on something like this, but it's important to gauge the interest in the town as well.
Yeah. And that's
I agree wholeheartedly that, we definitely need to get the opinion of the residents before moving forward, I would say. Is it an overwhelming desire to add open space? Because I recall hearing a statistic that the town of Webster leads all the other towns in Monroe County as far as acreage of open space. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know it was, so. Is that, you heard that statistic before?
I don't know, I do know that we've got, what, close to 1,500,
2,600.
26,
Um,
including the park.
Yeah, actually, well, Barry and Bill?
Well, I think that there's absolutely, a part of our population that is very interested in slowing development, if not ending development.
Yeah.
The problem the board faces is the cost. And because it's not that we don't have any upcoming significant bonding issues for major upgrades to our infrastructure. One being highway garage, another one being our phase 2 of our sewage treatment plant. We're looking at bonding millions of dollars to do that. Does it fit?
Yeah.
I think it's good to have numbers around this.
Yep.
Because it's very easy for people to say, we want more open space, we think we should preserve more open. Sorry.
I think we should preserve more open space. But until people really see what the cost of that is, you really can't make a decision.
Yeah. Bill?
We got a tough act of balancing our budget. We got a bond that's gonna expire, but in the meantime, we're gonna add 2 more bonds for municipal equipment and buildings and pump stations. At some point, the taxpayer's gonna say to us, enough's enough. Let's stop spending for a while.
And that will be up to the residents.
They're gonna have to vote on it, whether they wanna spend that money.
And it's interesting, I had, of course, this is the first time, I guess, not that the town board is not aware, I tried to let them know that starting back a year ago, I think it started with Diana and Gail, and the next meeting, it was Diana and Gail. Then the third meeting was Diana, Gail, and Larry, and then I think the fourth meeting was, I've been in a lot of meetings on this in the last year. And I've tried to update the board that this was probably coming to, I want to say, a head where you guys are going to come in and present this idea and the proposal. So since I have an advantage of having a head start mentally on being aware of this for the last year, more so than the other 4 board members, and that might be the only head start I have mentally on them, but that's another story. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions. And especially in this day and age with what we've gone through in the last year in this country, I'm going to say this is the genre of, here are some things I think we all can agree on. That everybody in this room, and I would venture to guess that almost every resident of Webster would agree with these things. Number 1, I don't think anybody that lives in Webster wants 55,000 people in this town that is 35 square miles. Is that a safe guess that we would all agree on that? Or 99% of the population would agree that the thought of going from 46,000 people to 55,000, as you said, Jen, I think you said in the next however many years based on 4,000 acres and all that. There are not many residents of Webster that would not agree that that is concerning to them. Number 2, and this was long before I was the supervisor. I call this also maybe debunking a little bit of a myth. This town and its leadership has prioritized green space. And I'm going to prove it empirically with 2 things. One, and Karen in the back looked at me odd when I took this off the wall tonight here in the town boardroom. So I hope that they can see it at home on the camera. This is essentially, as of 2019, a map of Webster and identifies that 2,600 acres of green space and the different breakdown of them, parks and this and that. Now, why does this picture prove we have prioritized, long before I was the supervisor, open space. Because in this boardroom where it hangs, and Karen, I promise I'll hang it back up, it won't get broken. This is the only picture in the boardroom besides pictures of the supervisors for the last 100 and some odd years. You find that interesting? It's the only other picture. And the same exact picture is hanging in the town hall lobby. Did anybody know that? You know what other pictures are in the town hall lobby? The war veterans. So to me, that shows that the town and its leadership has prioritized green space. Now, the second empirical data item that I'm going to say is that we do prioritize green space is that in 2020, the town bought 40 acres, the Buckler property, correct? What is that going to be used for?
Open space.
Looking at,
Thank you.
Open space.
And I am confident, based on what is going on right now, that one of the properties on the inventory list, we have a draft as of today of a purchase contract for approximately 20 acres. That is land that I think has been around for 20 years of the family talking to the government about selling to us. And would tie in very nicely, I think, to our trail system.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't want to get too detailed, but I'm sure people can connect the dots on that. That's 14 months. And we bought 60 acres. I don't want to speak for the other board members, but I think when the opportunities come up, we jump on it. Price is right. And the third thing I would hope that we all agree on is that the 2008 comprehensive plan needs to be updated. It is 2021. And I want to say that process has somewhat begun. I have reached out and I've gotten assistance from people in this town, leaders in this town, who have been around for 20 years, so they have a good perspective of taking a look at the initiatives from the 2008 comprehensive plan. And I have asked them, can you look at these initiatives as they're summarized up and tell me which ones do you feel got done and which ones didn't? And the exercise that we're doing is not for their health. It's so that we can tabulate that up and learn as we go into the updated comprehensive plan. We learn from history, or you're destined to repeat it. So if we have a lot of things that didn't get accomplished in the 2008 comprehensive plan, what are the genres of them that we can learn from that as we put together the next comprehensive plan to avoid that? Because I made it very clear, I'm not going to be involved in some comprehensive plan that is glad-handing people, that doesn't have a potential to have those initiatives get done, based on the rules of engagement the day that it gets adopted. Does everybody understand that? So those are my three statements. My two questions are this. And I can't read that, John, but that's just because I have old eyes. But where in that timeline does a referendum go to have the people of Webster say, yeah, we want to do this, or no, we don't want to do this? If it's at the end of that process and there's a lot of time, energy, and money out before we go ask the town, that concerns me. If it's closer to the beginning of the process, I think Patty, John, everybody said, yeah, you get it on and let's see what the people have to say. That's not as cut and dry as you would think.
No.
No, they have to be
because of
aware.
what John, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, what Bill and Barry said. In a vacuum, we all want open space. But I got to tell you something. You want open space until all of a sudden there's raw sewage in your front lawn. And we have a 60-year-old sewer plant that
Oh, yeah.
we'd rather not have raw sewage in your front lawn. Luckily, John, you live in Albany, so it's not going to affect you. Okay? So I'll tell you this. I'd love to do it all. I'd love to build the highway garage. I'd love to build the sewer plant. And I'd love to have the open space. But that's a challenge that we'll have to discern as we go along. So-
we talk about 4,000 acres of land that's still undeveloped, 4,000. And let's say that we are all in agreement here, let's move forward, so we're going to spend $5 million. Okay, we're going to do a referendum for $5 million. Still are going to have to identify which pieces of property you desire, or we desire as a community, and then arrange to do that. So, there's a lot more to this than just agreeing whether we'd like to move forward on this.
And that's why, Larry, where does a referendum come in that timeline?
Right at the beginning. I think, based on what we did last time, we can talk about 4,000 acres are undeveloped. 4,000 acres are not available.
Right.
And you don't know what is available until you have a process to go out and talk to all these people in a serious way and say, do you have interest in doing this, and in what kind of framework would you be willing to do it? I think that's something that could come out of this proposal, that piece of it for sure, to go and do a survey of that interest on the part of the landowners. And then you can come up and say, well, only 100 acres are available, which doesn't cost too much. That's one thing you do. You probably go out and get a grant and do that. Or there's a lot of interest and they'd really be interested in it. I think I wouldn't go to a referendum until you know that.
Right.
If you ask for 5 million and you can only spend 500,000, that was wasting an awful lot of people's time and energy.
You have to identify the properties first that are available.
And I think that takes time, so this is 2021. I don't believe that can be done this year. It takes time to just set up all those meetings and get that organized. I would say if you're gonna go to a referendum, I think they're probably next year, 2022 sometime might work. And then you could find out, are people interested in that? If there is no interest on the part of landowners to sell the land, well, then we close up the book and say, okay, it was a nice effort.
As I look through this list, I can see a couple, one sticks out in my mind right away where I know that they would be interested. Cost, the price of what we're willing to pay would be the deciding factor.
Right. I think the issues with a lot of these people, the landowners, once they start getting to the point where they have some interest in moving on, for whatever the reason is, if there is no discussion about the town possibly wanting to preserve the state of property, then they're gonna probably sell to developers and it will just move on. They won't wait forever. That's why I'm thinking if there is it might be good to go through that planning process and the outreach process to landowners and firm up a plan that can be executed. I would go that far. You don't have to go, when you're done with that, if you see there's 4 properties and nobody on the board says, hey, who cares about that property? Then again, you don't have to go through the rest of that expense. And the big expense comes at the end, where you're starting to do all the real estate transaction costs and all the cost of actually purchasing it. But I think it's a very good time to do that outreach and figure out, is this something that can be done?
Sorry, we had a little light malfunction that I think we can fix pretty quick. One of those has to be hit to turn some of the lights back on. Well, we've gone a few minutes over, that's fine. I know you came a long way, John. I'll go back to, and this might be offline, I'll get together with Larry, John, and the crew, is that the reason why trying to figure out the referendum, both in the timeline that's there, but also how much money will be invested to get to a referendum. And that's the thing, is that, the proposal, and John, you said it, it's 20% is the estimate of soft cost, surveys, this and that. So you buy $5 million in a bond or in a referendum, it means you're paying $4 million for the land. Is that right? Then 20% of the $5 million is the soft cost, surveys, this and that. It's an estimate. It's probably high. But within that estimate is John, your firm in this proposal is about $248,000 to perform this task on behalf of the town. without prejudice, I'm not saying whether that's a good price, bad price, or this and that. What I'm trying to figure out is, when does the board and the town taxpayers have to pay that 248? We have to pay that all to get to a referendum to see if people want to spend $5 million? So are we spending $250,000 to analyze enough to be on a referendum? Or is the referendum a free ride with volunteer work and this and that, and we get it on the ballot, and if the people say yes, then we start spending those soft costs like the 248?
I think that's a good question, right? And I think it's one of the things that I would say, it's been so long, right, since we've had that was a bigger conversation. One of the things that we would include in the approach we would take is we would do a community survey and ask people, and something we could do is send a questionnaire out to every resident of the town, ask them, how important is this to you? Should we, to the town, how important are these activities? I think we learned last time, I think the concern that came up, we could all armchair quarterback this, but it was 3,000 acres was targeted 20 years ago, right? And a $20 million price tag I think the number was too much for people. And so just conceptually it's too big of a number, and so looking forward, I think what we heard at that time, when that vote went down, people said it was too much money. And they were concerned about a blank check. That came up saying, well, we don't know what we're getting, for the 20 million. We don't have any right transactions, we don't know the interest, we don't know the price. So what we did was we went back to town, Larry said, let's go back. There was a post-vote survey. What did people think? We did a lot of work after the vote, during the vote and afterward, to find out people all wanted it. Just like you said, most people wanted it. They wanted a smaller plan. They wanted to know what the properties were. They wanted to know where the money was going. And the other part was that gave us time to put together grant applications, et cetera. So, and I know the number seems like a lot of money, but the soft cost that you're going to pay for our services, in the scheme of things, is
John, I'm not questioning percentage. I'm questioning when it gets paid, because then the board has to authorize.
Oh, right.
If it's paid all up front, because it costs to send out those surveys, it costs to do all this stuff. If that's when the 248 is out, and we've run out of time, and I'm going to tell you this right now.
Sure.
I love that timeline, because we're going to get that timeline,
Yep.
and we're going to talk about, it really is one end of the spectrum or the other, is that it doesn't cost this town a dime to get on a referendum in 2022, and if the people say, yeah, we want it, then off we go with $5 million and all the soft costs. But if it costs us $250 or whatever up front to get to a referendum, that's something that the board is going to have to really think long and hard about. And so what we'll do is offline, because now we're at 38 minutes. We've had 4 meetings between the crew. You and I talked the other day on the phone. I'm very open to having another meeting very soon as we really start to hammer down on that timeline and how much would this board have to authorize on the if-come that the community is going to vote yes on a referendum. I feel like the board would need to know how much money is going to be paid right up to the day that referendum vote happens in November of 22 or whenever, because Larry?
Can I suggest that maybe, John, you should go back and see if there's a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and go through the phases of that. And then you can go to phase 1, or authorize phase 1 if you're comfortable with that. And if that works out well, then you can maybe go and say, here's what it costs to get to phase 2.
And look, we're going to get together. And John, I hope maybe you don't have to come to all the again, but we'd love you to.
Yeah, no problem.
This isn't a one-and-done. We'll have you back at a workshop in a month or two after we have some offline meetings about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you walk out of here not like disgruntled about this, but say, hey, this is the first shot across the bow.
Right.
Now we're talking brass tacks, and things no.
But if it's gonna cost $250,000 to get to referendum, that's an interesting thing. And we'll have to talk about it. And by the next time we do the workshop, we'll have that hammered out, right?
Right, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys, and
Thank you.
Diana, Gail, Peter.
By the way, he's coming from Saratoga.
Yes. Don't say no.
Oh, well,
Thanks, Barry.
It's a beautiful country down there, that's for sure.
thanks, guys and
Good to
gals.
see you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because they're taking it. Thank you for the question about the grant, because that's good news if we move forward and all that. So from the memories of the board members who were around for the 2005, if it was 1,000 acres for $7 million, did we not have to bond $7 million because we got $2 million in grants?
No, it was a little over 5 million, wasn't it? The bond was a little over 5 million?
I thought the bond was around 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that,
I don't know what we got in grants, but,
I don't recall us getting grants for that. I'm not saying that we didn't, I just don't
As far
remember.
as I know, we purchased everything out of the 5 million.
Right.
okay.
There's a federal grant for almost $2 million, county grant for $300,000.
That's right, we did get something for Shriver's Farm.
Yeah.
That was a state grant, was it not?
Yeah. Well, federal money
Yep.
is through the state grant. Yeah.
So we actually got more than the $5 million worth.
So that, I just think this in terms of perspective, that's part of the, when you get to the bond or the vote, all that's what you get too, it's on the table, it's not just the vote at the bottom, the grants, all the other, that's all figured out as part of it, so.
John, I got it, and we'll, because if it ends up that we can come back to the board and say, hey, guess what, we have a free ride to the referendum, I can't imagine anybody would be up against that.
One of the things also that we didn't talk about was when the first bond was turned down, one of the
Yes.
things we found out that people didn't want to buy just development rights, some of it they wanted to own.
Yeah. Another step in the process, that's all. You know?
What was it till the day?
No, it wasn't. And if anything we've learned this year, and the next gentleman is a good segue with all that we've done this year, there is a process to things, isn't there? And it can be frustrating at times, but isn't it funny, some of the stuff we've done this year, that at the end you're like, you know, I'm kind of glad we went through that process. Because some good decisions came out of collaborative and taking a little.
Thank you very
John,
much.
safe ride back.
See you, John.
All right?